The man waiting for me at the airport wasn't my father. He was from the bank, holding a folder with my name printed across the top. "Ms. Stevens," he said quietly. "Your father and brother sold your house last month." For a moment, I didn't breathe. My suitcase slipped from my hand, and I just stared at him, hearing nothing but the ringing in my ears. My name, my home, my mother's walls, all gone with a single signature I never wrote. I called my father right there, my voice shaking. "You did what?" He sighed, tired and cold. "You weren't here, Molly. We did what we had to do, for family." And in that instant, family stopped meaning what it used to. It became the word that broke me. The plane touched down in Tacoma, and I told myself the hard part was over. After 2 years overseas, all I wanted was the quiet rhythm of home, the creak of the old pine floors, the smell of the lake through my mother's window. I pulled my suitcase through the arrivals hall, scanning the crowd for a familiar face. Instead, a man in a gray suit lifted a small sign with my initials. "Ms. Stevens," he said, his tone almost apologetic. "Your father asked me to meet you." He handed me a folder stamped with Rainier Bank's logo. Inside, one line glared up at me. "Property transfer completed." I frowned, shaking my head. "There's a mistake. That property belongs to me." He hesitated. "It was yours, Ms. Stevens. The house was sold last month." Something inside me cracked, quietly, cleanly, like ice splitting underfoot. I stepped aside and called my father. The phone rang too long before his voice finally came, calm and cold. "We handled it for the family." For the family. 2 words that turned my blood to glass. The crowd moved around me, the air sharp with winter. I couldn't feel my hands. The world seemed to fade until only that phrase echoed in my head. There was no home to return to, only the hollow sound of everything I'd trusted collapsing in silence. 6 months earlier, I was still in Okinawa. The air was dense with salt and jet fuel, the kind of heat that clung to your lungs long after sunset. Most nights, after long shifts at the hangar, I sat on my dorm balcony, recording small voice notes for my father, mundane updates about the sea, the food, the rhythm of life overseas. It was my way of staying tethered to home. That night, while I was sketching an engine diagram, my phone chimed. A new message from Rainier Bank. The subject line read, "Ownership update in progress." My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. I hadn't submitted any forms, hadn't requested any changes. Still, the unease felt immediate, like the first tremor before a quake. I called my father. It took 4 rings before he picked up. His tone was irritated, almost casual. "It's just refinancing. Honey, stop worrying." But behind his voice, I caught another sound, a man's laugh, slurred and careless. "She won't know until she lands." My breath hitched. "Who was that?" "No one," he said too quickly. "Caleb just stopped by." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about the laughter stuck in my ears long after the call ended. I told myself not to spiral, to trust him, because that's what daughters do. Over the next few weeks, the emails kept coming, all with the same sterile phrase, "Under review." Whenever I called, my father claimed he was busy or cut the conversation short. The distance between us felt heavier than the Pacific itself. During lunch one day, I mentioned it to Kai, a coworker from Hawaii who worked in finance. He paused mid-bite and frowned. "If your name's on a VA property, nobody can touch it without your signature." The words lodged in my chest. I had nearly forgotten. The house my mother left behind was officially purchased under a VA home loan, a veterans program meant to protect ownership rights. That night, I logged into the county property portal. The page loaded painfully slow, every second a small pulse of dread. Then it appeared, Molly Stevens, owner, and directly beneath it, Robert Stevens, power of attorney. My hands went cold. Power of attorney? I hadn't renewed that since Afghanistan, a decade ago. I sat frozen, staring at the screen until the lines blurred. Finally, I typed a message to Evan Morales, a friend from my JAG Corps days. His reply came minutes later. That POA shouldn't be active. If your father's using it, something's off. The sentence struck harder than the humid wind outside. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the faint hum of aircraft overhead, realizing that the thing I'd been afraid to name was already happening. The next morning, I filed an official request with Pierce County for a certified deed copy. 3 days later, a heavy PDF arrived in my inbox. I printed it and spread the pages across my desk. The signature labeled Molly L. Stevens stared back at me. Familiar, but wrong. The loops were rigid, the angle too sharp, the pressure uneven. It looked like someone tracing my name from memory. I retrieved my original contract from 2015 and laid the two side by side. Even without forensic ink, the lie was obvious. I picked up the phone, ready to confront him, but my thumb froze over the call button. I could already hear his voice. Calm, dismissive, weaponized with authority. Don't worry. It's under control. Instead, I sent the files to Evan. He called within the hour, his voice quieter than usual. If he used that old POA on a VA-backed property. Molly. That's not just wrong. It's federal. I couldn't respond. The room felt smaller, the air heavy. Outside, the tide rose and fell against the breakwater, steady and cruel, as if mocking how easily life continued while mine began to crack. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. Stop digging. We all need this to stay quiet. No name, no context. Just a single emoji at the end. A tiny gold key. I locked my screen and placed the phone face down. The reflection of the moon shimmered on the sea, fractured and cold. If someone had touched my mother's house, they'd picked the wrong daughter to underestimate. Whatever this was, I wasn't backing down, not this time. The red-eye to Washington landed before dawn. As the taxi turned down the road by the lake, my heart pounded like it was trying to warn me. The house still stood among the pines, but it didn't breathe the same. The lights were wrong, the curtains different. And then laughter, the sound of children spilling through my mother's porch. I climbed the steps and knocked. A woman in her mid-30s opened the door, hair pulled back, a mug in her hand that read, "One day at a time." "Can I help you? I'm looking for Dana Price." "That's me." "I used to live here," I said quietly. Her eyes flickered with confusion, then sympathy. "I'm sorry. The previous owner's father sold it. Said his daughter was deployed overseas." I looked past her shoulder. The clock my mother loved was gone, replaced by pale paint and new furniture. But one thing remained. The small black scorch mark on the floor where my mother had once dropped a Christmas candle. It hit me like a ghost still breathing in the room. "Did he mention this house was bought with a VA loan?" I asked. "He said everything was approved," she replied. "A man named Grant handled the papers." Grant. The name crawled under my skin, sharp and cold. I remembered the text message from months ago, the tiny gold key. I stepped back into the cold air, the scent of cedar and rain wrapping around me like something familiar I no longer owned. The house was still there, but it had stopped belonging to me the moment my family sold it. That night, in a motel near the airport, I called Evan. The noise of his office hummed through the line. "I'm back," I said. "The house is gone." "Who bought it?" "A widow. She said a man named Grant handled everything." A long pause. "Grant Mercer? You know him?" "Too well. He's been flagged before for property fraud targeting veterans." My stomach tightened. "Then my father and brother sold my home to him. Or through him," Evan corrected. "He never acts alone." 3 days later, I sat in the VA office downtown, the smell of old files and coffee thick in the air. The clerk, Mrs. Cortez, gray hair, kind eyes, scanned my papers. "Your mother used to work with me," she said softly. "Lydia Stevens. I'm sorry this is happening." She typed quickly, then turned the monitor toward me. The POA renewal was faxed from Arizona last year. No notary, no verification. Arizona, My father, Caleb. And look here, she said. VA loans require both parties present for a sale. That means it's invalid under federal law. I nodded slowly. So it can be reversed? If you can prove forgery or fraud. Yes. I left holding the printed page, light as air but heavy as truth. Outside, my phone vibrated. A message appeared. You don't want to mess with people who helped your family. Attached was a photo, my mother's porch, Dana and her children playing. Cold sweat ran down my back. He wasn't just a fraud. He was watching me. I sent the picture to Evan. He called immediately. He's threatening you? That's enough to escalate. No, I said. That's enough to fight. Sitting in my car, I opened my laptop and sent every file, every screenshot, every signature to the Washington State Attorney General's office. When I pressed send, I finally stopped shaking. This was no longer about family. It was a crime. And I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid anymore. I drove through the night from Seattle to Tucson, the desert stretching endlessly under a fading moon, the headlights carved through dust and emptiness, each mile peeling back a layer of what I thought I knew about family. By dawn, the sky turned gold, the kind of light that exposes everything you'd rather keep hidden. Their house sat at the end of a dirt road, the yard overgrown, the mailbox hanging open like a broken jaw. I knocked once. Inside, the TV blared, cans rattled against a table, and something sour hung in the air. My father opened the door. He looked smaller, his shoulders bowed under years of excuses. Caleb lounged on the couch, shirt unbuttoned, a beer sweating in his hand. Well, look who decided to show up, he said, smirking. I came for the truth. My father's voice cut in fast. Let's not start a fight. You weren't here. Molly. We had to act. Act? You sold Mom's house. That wasn't acting. That was stealing. He sighed, the sound of someone too tired to pretend. He was in trouble. He had people after him. People? You mean Grant Mercer? Silence fell. Caleb's smirk faltered, his eyes shifting away. My father didn't deny the name. The air thickened, and for the first time, I saw the guilt written across his face. I placed the documents on the table. VA records, wire transfers, a printed bank log. You used my old power of attorney from Afghanistan. You forged my signature. His hands shook. It wasn't like that. Mercer said it was legal. The VA wouldn't care. You believed a con man over your own daughter? He stood, voice cracking into anger. Don't talk to me like I'm a criminal. Then stop acting like one. The room went still. Caleb popped another beer and muttered, You always think you're better than us. No, I said softly. I just think we could have been better. My father's face twisted between fear and shame. How much did Mercer pay? Enough, Caleb said. The debt's gone. We're clear. You're clear because you used my name as your shield. I grabbed the folder and walked out. Behind me. My father called after me, his voice breaking. You can't undo this. Molly, let it go. I turned under the blood-red sunset. Watch me. 2 weeks later, Evan sent me a file. I sat in my car as it played through the speakers. Caleb's voice, slurred, careless. She'll never find out. She's halfway across the world. Mercer laughed. Good. Once the bank clears, we split it 50-50. My fists clenched until I felt the sting of my own nails. I forwarded the file to the Attorney General's office. Within 24 hours, they confirmed a federal investigation was underway. That night, my phone rang. A private number. Mercer's voice, calm and cruel. You think you can win this, soldier girl? I don't have to win. I just have to tell the truth. Truth won't save your father. Maybe not, I said, but it'll save me. I hung up and drove straight to the cafe by the lake to meet Dana. She looked nervous, clutching a folder. My lawyer says if this was VA property, it's void. But I don't want to fight your family. You're not fighting them, I said. You're standing beside me. She exhaled slowly, then nodded. That was all it took. One honest witness to break the silence. Hours later, as I left the parking lot, Another text appeared. Enjoy your victory. Captain, some homes aren't worth saving. I looked at the message, then at the streak of sunset bleeding across the desert horizon. That's where you're wrong, I whispered. Some homes are the only thing worth saving. The wind picked up the red dust from the road, swirling behind me like a trail of everything I'd already lost, and everything I was finally ready to reclaim. Monday morning, I walked into the Tacoma County Courthouse. The hall was cold, lights glaring off polished stone. I wore my old Air Force suit, a quiet reminder that discipline was the last armor I had left. In the front row sat my father, pale and trembling. Caleb slouched beside him, eyes hollow. Across the aisle, Grant Mercer leaned back, smirking. Evan stood next to me, steady as ever. Dana sat behind us, her hands clasped tight. The judge called the case, Stevens versus Mercer et al. The prosecutor presented each piece of evidence: the expired power of attorney, the forged signature, the VA loan document requiring my consent, the recording of Mercer's voice saying, "She'll never find out." Every word echoed like a hammer. When I took the stand, the lawyer asked why I hadn't confronted my father sooner, because I thought love could stop betrayal. I was wrong. Why not move on? Because silence would make me part of the crime. The courtroom froze. Then the prosecutor revealed the bank transfer from Mercer's company to the Stevens Family Trust. "This isn't family business," he said. "This is federal fraud." The gavel fell, Mercer arrested, Caleb fined, my father ordered restitution, my home returned. Dana squeezed my hand. "We did it," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "We survived it." A month after the trial, the call came from the VA hospital. The doctor's voice was gentle, almost cautious. "Your father's here. Heart complications." I arrived wearing plain clothes, holding a small bouquet of chrysanthemums. He sat by the window in a pale blue gown, thinner than I remembered, his eyes dull with exhaustion. "You came," he said, voice cracking slightly. "I didn't come for forgiveness." I told him, "I came because I still have decency." He exhaled slowly, staring at the floor. I thought helping him would keep our family together. "You kept him afloat by sinking me," I said softly. "I never meant to hurt you. You didn't mean to, but you did. And that's what matters." For a moment, the silence between us wasn't filled with anger anymore, just the hollow space where love used to live. He turned toward the window, his voice breaking. "Your mother, she'd be ashamed of me. She'd be sad." I said quietly, "There's a difference." As I stood to leave, he reached for my hand, trembling. "The lawyer says what's left of my pension. I put it into a veterans housing fund. It's not much, but it's something." I interrupted. "It's a start, outside." The sky was clear and endless. For the first time in months, I could breathe. The truth, I realized, might hurt, but it was lighter than a lie. When the last document was signed, I drove back to the house by the lake. The road curved through the trees, just as I remembered, sunlight flickering through the branches, soft and gold. The house stood quietly at the end of the lane, unchanged yet older, like it had been holding its breath all this time. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Dana and her children were gone. On the kitchen counter, I found a card written in her careful handwriting. "Thank you for standing up when we couldn't, Dana." Next to it sat her coffee mug, the one that said "One day at a time." I smiled and placed it on the windowsill, where the morning light could reach it. I opened the windows. Warm air drifted in, carrying the sound of the lake and the scent of pine needles baking in the sun. I walked slowly through the rooms, fingertips brushing along the walls. The small scorch mark on the floor remained, the same one from the Christmas candle my mother dropped years ago. And on the doorframe, faint but still visible, the initials M.S., mine, carved into the wood with a pocket knife when I was 12. Everything I had lost was still here in some form. The echoes, the scars, the proof that even when broken, something can endure. Out on the porch, I raised the old American flag once more, not for ceremony, not for pride, but because it meant honor, and honor was the one thing they hadn't taken. The wind caught the fabric and lifted it high. I watched it ripple against the wide, endless blue, and for the first time in months, my chest loosened. They thought they sold my home, I whispered, but it was never theirs to sell. This house was built from every promise I kept. The light slid down through the pines, gold and forgiving. I didn't need anyone's apology. I didn't need their approval. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about walking back into what was mine and knowing I was still whole.